Welcome back, everybody. My name is Garrett,
And I'm Katie.
and we are going over chapters 3 and chapter 4 of the book that we covered last week, Things I'd Wish I'd Known Before We Got Married. In chapter 3, we're going to talk about the myth like daughter, or like mother like daughter, and like father like son. And in chapter 4, we're going to be going over a super applicable one and a touchy subject, disagreeing without being disagreeable. Now, I'm sure many people have been in an argument with their significant other, and I'm also sure at some unfortunate point or another, the hurtful words, "you're just like your mom," or "you're just like your dad," have come out of somebody's mouth. And now I believe these words sting to some degree because for the very unfortunate fact that as much as we don't really want to admit, some of our upbringing and the way our parents were have rubbed off on us. And despite however valid or invalid the statement may be at the time that it's said, it's probably best said that it's never said at all. But some of the things that may rub off on us could be things as harmless as physical mannerisms, but some of them can be really bad habits or even harmful to the relationship. Do you want to give an example?
Like alcoholism, abusive behavior, how you respond to arguments, which could be a positive or negative way in responding. How you do or don't do the chores around the house, and just habits and mannerisms that you picked up from them.
True. Some personal examples that I've got here. Like, my dad has always had a bit of a short and fiery temper, especially when it came to me doing something goofy or like something I probably shouldn't have done, or whenever he had plans and I had little time wasters like putting on my shoes or finding a jacket or something. And I know, and making him late obviously made him upset. And I know that I have a little bit of that impatience when it comes to my kids and them doing stuff. And then on a lighter note, my dad has like a super contagious belly laugh. Like whenever he finds something super funny, he's got this obnoxious laugh that like starts in his gut and just like reverberates throughout his whole body, but it's super contagious. And I know whenever I find something funny, like I'm like, man, I sound just like Dad. And then what about for you? Do you have?
Well, the impatience thing is something that I also picked up from my mother. That she would be really impatient with me as well while I was getting dressed or doing something, and the way that she would talk to me. And I find that I find oftentimes whenever I'm talking to Ben that I sound a lot like her in those same kind of situations, telling him to hurry up and come on and just being really impatient. Also, on a different note, Mom has always been really self-sacrificial, and I think I take after her on that, putting myself last without even realizing it, because I'm taking care of my family and the house, and I have to make a conscious effort to take care of myself, make myself a priority.
Yep. Sometimes you need to be reminded of that. But there's also some very major things that may inevitably rub off on us, like the way that we talk to our spouse or the way we treat our finances, the way we handle our emotions personally, even addictions. For example, if what we've seen growing up is one of our parents yelling at each other or yelling at the other, then it can turn into an unfortunate habit that we inherit and apply to any future relationships that we have. It can also be major things like how we raise our children, but that stuff like that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. For example, in Katie and I's relationship, her son usually gets a drink of water at night, and while he's in bed, like he's able to have a cup, and my kids don't get that because growing up, like I don't remember having cups at my bed or at bed because either I'd pee myself or it was just something to distract me. And so my kids were used to not having it, her kid was used to having it, and so something like that, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it definitely can cause conflict in the relationship. So it's always really good to talk about the differences in our upbringings and also the differences in our like how we want to bring up our children and our finances and everything else. But also, just like how we raise our children, how we talk to our spouse, if our parents had nasty habits like alcoholism, it doesn't necessarily mean that we turn and fall victim to the same thing. But in the book, Chapman proposes a hypothetical question. He says, but can't we learn from our parents' poor example and change our own behavior? To which he replies, the answer is yes, but the important word is to learn, or learn. So while yes, you can fall into the same pit trap, and I mean, if you see your parents smoking, you see your parents drinking, you see your parents doing something that they shouldn't really be doing, then if that's what you've grown up as a norm, or if that's what you've seen your parents do when, you know, they're stressed out, you can very easily fall into that same pit trap. But as long as you're willing to learn and acknowledge, hey, this is not appropriate behavior, then you could take the right steps towards not falling into that same routine or that same habit. So it's a super short chapter, but to wrap it up, Gary says that he encourages dating and married couples to have plenty of exposure to each other's parents to discover their personalities, how they speak, what they value, how they relate to each other, because this is an example that our spouse has had for a relationship. And if we observe anything that bothers us, we should speak about it openly and discuss thoroughly with our significant other. And if need be, discuss how we can take steps towards breaking any harmful habits. Chapter 4 is probably going to take up a majority of our time because it is, I would say, key to relationships. And sometimes this stuff is really hard to live by because we get consumed by our emotions. But they're good things to adapt or to adopt. Now, I feel like another fallacy that people fall prey to is that if you marry the quote-unquote right person, that you'll never argue. And unfortunately, that's just not true. People argue throughout their lives with a variety of different people because we're all individuals. We all have our own upbringings, our different morals, ideas, opinions, work ethics, and the list goes on and on. But there are so many different things that can clash between ourselves and our partners, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we've made a mistake. It just means that we're individuals, that we're human. For a personal example, for me, I love video games. I do. I've had a controller in my hand for as long as I can remember. I've lived thousands of lives, defeated many world-threatening evildoers, pummeled countless friends, connected with people throughout the world, and even saved an infinite amount of damsels in distress. It's something that I do for enjoyment, for the camaraderie, and as a time killer. And Katie, on the other hand, thinks it's a waste of time because it's not productive in the real world. There's things that can be done, like groceries, like grocery shopping, or like trash, or dishes, or vacuuming, or
laundry.
Yeah. So she doesn't feel the same about that. And then for Katie, do you have an example?
Well, I am constantly cleaning, and you're always telling me to relax, and it's hard for me to do that. But I'm also really environmentally conscious, and I hate to waste even a bite of food. And I'd rather use a towel than a paper towel, and I'd like to recycle, and it's that's another thing I get from my mom because she's always been the same way. But Garrett finds this to be a little bit obsessive, and he would rather take the route of convenience because recycling and living that way is not always convenient. It's actually really not convenient at all.
And it's not with everything.
We have to have space to put the recyclables before they're able to be recycled, and the convenient and or the environmentally conscious and frugal just isn't quick and convenient. So
yeah, and eventually, because she has a different view on video games and I have a different view on convenience, conflict will rear its ugly head. Now, we can end up going one of two ways whenever a conflict arises. We can explain our perspective on the matter and listen to our partner's perspective, then respectfully and peacefully come to a solution. Or we can put on our verbal boxing gloves and go toe-to-toe a couple rounds, which, unfortunately, we tend to end up in the second option more often than not.
But we've been doing better lately on that.
We have. One thing that I've kept seeing online that's really kind of helped things in perspective sometimes when I'm not caught up in my feelings, is it's not you versus your spouse or your spouse versus you. It's you and your spouse versus the problem, which is really good. Like, whenever it comes to me playing video games, there can come a point where it crosses, just like with her recycling, where it can cross enjoyment into obsession. And so it's not necessarily my wife versus me playing video games, or me versus my wife and defending my time. It's me and my wife against time management. And same thing with the... What? I've got a Clippy, and I'm just like...
It's annoying.
My bad. But... I can't... I have to have something to fidget with. But just like with Katie and her recycling, like it's not, whenever it starts to become obsessive, it's not Katie versus me and defending what she likes to do, or me defending against Katie because she wants to take a cheap way out. It's Katie and I versus, once again in that situation, time management, and which also can be lumped up with convenience. Now, Chapman shares a few things that we need to do to help us choose option one in our example and dissolve arguments. He says, in quotes, first, we must begin by accepting the reality that we have conflicts. Conflicts are not a sign that you've married the wrong person. They simply affirm that you are human. Now, I wish I could just quote this whole chapter, because there's it is filled to the brim with sound descriptions, and he points out that we as individuals think our ideas are the best, but we fail to see that our spouse feels the same about their ideas. So our logic and their logic will not ever agree with one another, and our emotions will not mirror theirs either. He breaks conflict up into two different groups, major and minor conflicts. Minor conflicts would be something like how to load the dishwasher, what to feed the kids for breakfast,
How to fold the towels.
But major conflicts would be things like what school our kids go to, what church we attend, etc. Either way, conflicts of any scale have the chance to not only destroy an afternoon, but a lifetime. He then shows that there's a brighter side to conflict as well. He points out that conflict has the potential of teaching us how to love, support, and encourage each other. The difference is how you process the conflicts. One good example for me in this would be about a year ago when I was struggling with my growing faith, and Katie and I would argue because she was trying to do God's will for us while I was trying to go astray. And Steve Bug's down here trying to play footsies with Katie. But we had arguments about what direction our relationship was taking, and through the process, Katie didn't chastise me for my moments of weakness. She calmly told me that she understood my perspective and my feelings, but my feelings didn't change God's will. She constantly encouraged me, and she prayed for me and brought me back where I needed to be. And I'm pretty sure you could imagine how different that would be, and how different our relationship would be if she sat there and ridiculed me instead. And do you have any examples?
Well, recently there was a day where I came home and I had a stressful afternoon, and I had an attitude, and for no reason, nothing that you had done, but I was talking to you with an attitude, and I wasn't in a good mood, and instead of getting upset or angry or frustrated with me, you told me to step back and listen to the way I was talking, and to apologize, and that you didn't deserve it, and it took me a few moments to cool down once I stepped away, but I realized that I was wrong, and I apologized, and there was no fight afterwards because of the way that he handled it.
And that's good. And to tack on to the end of that, the apologies. There's also the language of wait, no, I don't think apologetics is the right. But there's different apology languages, which. Steven, what are you doing? He's like over here like doing backflips and rolling around on his belly. He wants belly rubs.
He's trying to claw me.
Give him belly rubs. But we'll dive into that later. But there is different ways to apologize to people, and everyone receives them differently. But anyways, so once we, as a couple and as individuals, accept the fact that disagreements are just a part of being with someone who isn't a carbon copy of ourselves, we have to look for a healthy way of working through the disagreements. Gary points out here that a key in working these out is listening. He says, when most of us have conflicts, we feel the need to talk, but talking without listening leads to arguments. And I believe Scripture points out the importance of listening rather than speaking perfectly in James chapter 1, verses 19 through 20. And it says, my dear brothers and sisters, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Your anger can never make anything right in the eyes of God. And that's from the New Living Translation. And the same can be most definitely said about our significant other. I don't think anyone says, oh, wow, your yelling and hurtful words have changed my mind. You've been right all along. Usually our anger gets us deeper in the hole. Another good example of conflict resolution in this book is something that Katie and I have both adopted and modified a little bit and then incorporated into our relationship. Typically, whenever there's a heavy topic or really any topic that has a potential for conflict that needs to be discussed, we'll request what's called a listening time. For example, I want to talk about, painting the inside of our house that we just are getting ready to buy. Obviously, it's a sweet idea to use like bright race car red. I'm sure Katie will agree too, but on the rare chance that she wants to disagree with me, I want to discuss it with her. So here's how the hypothetical conversation would go. I would like to request a listening time.
Okay, what's the topic?
Painting our house.
Okay.
So in approaching the questionable topic in this manner, we do a few things to help combat being disagreeable and to allow her to do the same. First, I'm letting her know that I would like to discuss a topic that we may have differing opinions on. Second, I'm letting her prepare herself to hear my opinion on the matter instead of just springing it onto her randomly, which definitely can cause conflict. And then third, I am preparing myself to hear an opposition and not be caught off guard by assuming that she'd be okay with my idea to begin with. And lastly, I'm letting her know the topic beforehand so she knows the severity of the discussion at hand. Because if I just say, Katie, we need to talk, that can be anything. That can be, Katie, we need to talk because I'm almost out of jelly beans. Or, Katie, we need to talk because one of our kids fell in the well. Or,
Oh, well.
I don't know. But it could be any number of things. So by telling her, Katie, what I want to talk to you. And she says, what's the topic about? And I say, painting our house. She now knows what the topic is and that I'm not calling 911 because little Timmy fell in the well again. So just like that, in a 30-second interaction, I've set up 4 huge barricades to protect us from an ugly conflict. Now, when it comes to the listening time, we both agree on a time that we can sit down without kids, without phones or distractions. And once that time comes, I express my side of the discussion. So I'd like to paint the inside of our house race car red. I think it would complement our race car bed and our red shag carpet. And red is also my favorite color.
So you're wanting to paint the walls to match the furniture?
Yes.
Okay, and you think the race car red would be the best color?
Yep.
Okay, I can understand that.
See, look,
Since it all matches.
Exactly. And in that part of the discussion, I've explained my personal reasoning behind wanting to paint our room, and she's being active in the discussion, and that's the key to this. Well, actually, the key to this is genuinely trying to understand not only what I am suggesting, but why I am and how important it is to me. And she's also asking questions to help clarify my reasoning, but not just that, but to clarify her own understanding of the situation and my reasoning behind it. So after she hears me out, she understands to the best of her ability. I, in turn, ask her about her opinion on the matter, because that's how conversations work. There are 2 ways. It's not a monologue, it's a dialogue.
I think we should paint the inside of the house an off-white color because it would complement the furniture instead of matching it directly, and I think it would provide balance.
So you think and you feel that we should complement the red furniture with the off-white rather than matching our furniture with that awesome red color.
Yes.
I can understand that. Even though it's not a school. But now we're at this point where we both have our differences still. Those aren't gone. But in the book it's phrased, we have not yet solved our differences, but we do understand each other and affirmed each other's ideas. So we're no longer enemies. We've refused to argue. We are friends who are now going to look for... God, that was Steve. We are friends who are now going to look for a solution to a conflict. So this completely takes away the hostile atmosphere and creates a more friendly one. And once we've reached this point, we're able to look for a solution, which is known as compromising. Chapman describes this by saying, in marriage, it is never having my way. It is rather discovering our way. Now, when it comes to compromising, Chapman breaks this down into 3 different types of compromising. Hiccups. The first one is meeting in the middle. The second one is meeting on your side. And then the third is meeting later. We'll use an example from before about the house paint and trying to break these up. So in meeting in the middle, Katie and I can come to a compromise that I'm allowed to paint some rooms red and she some rooms off-white. Provided our house will look like some disgusting mess out of Alice in Wonderland, it would be a compromise. We find common ground where we agree to do part of what each of us wanted. So just as in the description, it's meeting in the middle. So the house isn't going to be completely red. The house isn't going to be completely off-white. We're going to mix and match, and our house is going to look dumb. The next way is meeting on your side. So Katie can see how much the sick race card red would mean to me and how much it would. And this is the key to this type of compromise. It is sacrificing her idea or your idea to meet the other person on their side. So doing it with a positive attitude and as an act of love is the key to that. On the flip, I could always sacrifice my idea and agree to her idea of the off-white. So that means it is saying, man, like me mentally, I really want race car red, but Katie really wants off-white. I value her opinion and I love her very much. So it is a very much intentional thing. It is an action. Love is an action, not a feeling. And because I love her and because I see how much it means to her, I'm willing to sacrifice my idea, my plan, to be able to give her her plan and meet her on her side. Lastly, in the meeting later, we both acknowledge that we can't agree on each other's ideas. We don't see a common ground where we can meet. So we will try talking about it at a later time. It's worth mentioning here that he also proposes that meeting later can also be a permanent solution to some conflicts where there really is no right or wrong answer. Like loading the dishwasher, personal taste in entertainment, like for me playing video games, Katie for cleaning till her fingers bleed, or even something as simple as how to squeeze a tube of toothpaste. So we can agree that if I'm loading the dishwasher, I can load it my way. If she's loading the dishwasher, she does it her way. And Gary Chapman also makes the comment, we agree to disagree on what is the logical thing to do, but we choose a practical solution. So it doesn't matter that Katie wants to put all of the plates and all the bowls and everything else on the bottom rack, like all the kid plates and kid bowls on the bottom rack, and I want them on the top rack because that makes more sense because it's not flying around. If she's the one loading the dishwasher, then I need to shut my face and let her load the dishwasher. And vice versa, if like I said, I think that all the plastic Tupperware and stuff should go on the top, and that all the big like plates and bowls and stuff should go on the bottom. If Katie disagrees with that, well then she should back off because I'm the one loading the dishwasher, not her. And then it comes, the meeting later can be a permanent solution to stuff like that. He finally closes out in this chapter by saying that the key to conflict resolution is creating a friendly atmosphere by listening to each other and affirming the other person's perspective rather than accusing each other of illogical thinking, which is a lot easier said than done when you're wrapped up in your feelings. So all in all, in these last 2 chapters, we've been given essential tools on how to read our partner. In chapter 3, we've come to learn that we can see a bit of what to expect from our partner in our marriage by observing our partners parents and their interactions. And these observations can be positive or negative and should be discussed if they are a concern. In Chapter 4, we learn that it's not us versus our spouse. It is the two of us versus a problem. That we are given an effective way to discuss potentially conflict-causing topics by creating a friendly atmosphere and the appropriate way to handle the conversation. And we're also given 3 different avenues in which we can try to find a solution with our partner. I'd have to say that out of all the things to take away from this book, aside from the love languages, these 2 chapters and the methods of conflict solving have probably got to be the most impactful on mine and Katie's relationship. We both really hope that the insight from this book helps you and yours better understand one another, and that we highly encourage you guys to get this book for yourselves, because you usually don't regret trying to better yourself. So listed in the description below will be some questions to stir up some conversation between you and yours. And then if you'd like to keep up with the series or catch up on some past videos, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. And thanks again for taking time out of your day to keep up with Katie and I. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And as I usually close out, well, actually before I close out, was there anything, my dear, that you would like to add?
No, except, I mean, with the compromising, I've found that if we do need to meet later, I like to separate myself out and take some time to pray about it and think about it and really try to understand every side of it, and just pray for understanding, and pray for peace, and pray for that this argument just quells, and because just to try to understand it better. And that's all I had to add.
Well, it's good. Well, it's definitely a good thing to add. Prayer is definitely a powerful tool that we are able to freely use. So why not use it freely?
And in that argumentative setting, if there's something going on and you have to separate yourself from it, then take prayer with you.
That's good. And also, one thing also that Katie and I have kind of adopted, I know we kind of closed out here, but I guess this little extra snippet, is the implementing of timeouts in our relationship. Now, from an immature standpoint, pardon if I use that word and people don't like it, but from an immature standpoint, a timeout is not a break in the relationship. A timeout is not, I've married this woman. There is no break. The break is when I die or when she dies. That's it. And then I have to deal with her eternally. So there's no break. A timeout in a relationship, what that means for us is like, why'd you eat all my jelly beans? And she's like, I didn't eat all your jelly beans. You ate all your jelly beans because you're a dummy. And then I'm like, whoa, uncalled for. Now I'm really angry. Time out. So that's acknowledging that things are getting heated in the relationship.
We've never actually had an argument about jelly beans. So.
No, we haven't. But you know what? You touch my jelly beans, we're gonna have lots of timeouts. But timeouts are acknowledging that things are getting heated in a discussion and acknowledging that it's not a good place to be talking. So
progress isn't being made. It's just getting worse. It's snowballing. There's misunderstanding.
Exactly.
Nothing's going to be solved in that moment. So you need to take a time. And that's, you need to take the time out, separate yourselves for a little bit from the situation, go your separate ways for 5 minutes or 15 minutes or an hour or however long it takes for you to cool off, and take prayer with you.
And then trying to come back at a later time,
Mm-hmm.
meeting later, and talking about it again when you guys have cooled off. A key point to making timeouts work, I can't say, Katie, you're a fathead because you ate my jelly beans. Timeout. Like, you can't sit there, you can't, like, dish it out and then be like, ha, timeout, you can't talk back. Like, no, that's not how it works. And just on the flip, we can't be in the middle of like, well, Katie, you're smelly. Garrett, you're fat. Katie, your hair's fluffy. Garrett, you're blah, 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 blah. We're already saying a whole bunch of hurtful words, and then next thing we know, the kids come inside and, I don't know. But things keep escalating. You can't wait till it gets, like, super bad and then call timeout.
And
timeout.
a
There's
lot
already
of
15,
restraint.
15 holes in the walls, and the kids are now climbing around on the ceiling eating chocolate bars, and the whole world's going in a handbasket. You need to call timeout when you see things starting to rise.
It takes a lot of restraint too, instead of feeding the argument, to call a timeout and separate yourself from it.
It really does. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of, I would almost say, supernatural understanding that there is a bigger picture here, and a lot of self-restraint and a lot of self-control. But it is a good thing to implement if you can implement it correctly. So sorry for getting super sidetracked there. Actually, I think we did good. I don't think we have any bloopers that we need to cut out.
Sometimes we even set an actual timer
Yes.
for 15 minutes, or depending on what the level of angry is.
Yeah, we set a timeout timer for our feelings.
15 minutes worth of angry, set a timer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
but is there anything else, my dear, that you would like to add?
No.
Perfect. So, sorry for getting super sidetracked again. So remember to live in love one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, and 1 minute at a time. And until next time, bye-bye!
Bye-bye.